do that. So Jim, welcome everyone to 10-minute lessons. And Jim, it's all you.
Thanks, Alana. And I'd like to welcome everyone as well. Thank you for joining us. I know some of you have tuned in before, know who I am, but just as a very brief introduction, I have an engineering background and spent my entire career in the facilities environment. For the last 22 years of my career, I was a director of the Penn State Facilities Engineering Institute. It's an organization that was dedicated to helping facilities with their infrastructure and energy related issues. As director, I did a lot of things, but one of the things I did was several times a year, I had the opportunity to provide presentations or updates to executives. Oftentimes that was, since I did a lot of work with government, state government, oftentimes that was to one of the governor's secretaries, someone in the governor's cabinet. So here's some things that I learned along the way. I think I got better, hopefully, as I went along, but I'm going to give you a few tips here today on that. I called it executive presentations. So I've broken that down into three things. I'm going to call it the setup, the execution, and the follow-up. We'll just start right in on the setup. The first thing you want to do for a meeting is to define your purpose. Why am I having this meeting? Well, more importantly, the executive is going to want to know, why am I having this meeting? Because they're very busy, they're always in meetings, and they actually get bored very easily with meetings. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that. But no matter what you're doing, probably if you're presenting to an executive, there's a sales element to it. You may be selling, if you're a vendor, you may be selling a product or a service. If it's inside your organization, you may be selling a project or an idea. But ultimately, in many ways, no matter what, you're selling yourself and your capabilities to this higher level person. And when we say executive, probably a very high level person. The second thing I want to say is that you want to research your audience. You want to know who this person is. In some ways, you may already know because they have some, they're a well-known person perhaps, either within your organization or an organization that you deal with or an organization you hope to deal with. But there's a very good resource that I found for finding out a more personal information about the executive, and that's the executive's administrative assistant. Usually this person's a pretty friendly person, and part of their job is to be personable. So pick up the phone and call them after the meeting is set up and just say, hey, we've got this meeting on the 15th, and I just want to make sure that I'm properly prepared and do a good job in our meeting. Tell me a little bit about so-and-so person and what their preferences are in the meeting so that I can really help them as much as I can. And if you put it like that, they are most likely going to help you out. And maybe you chat with them, maybe you make a little connection with them to a point where they tell you some personal things, not just some of their preferences. So that's a really, I think, a good tip in terms of researching your audience, but you may have some other ways and other techniques, but I found that one very effective. The next thing is to set an agenda. Executives don't like to be surprised. They like to have an agenda, not just, oh, we're going to have a meeting to sort of talk about X, Y, Z. Right? They want an agenda, and you need to send them that agenda so that they can see what it is, right? So that they can be prepared ahead of time as well. And so that's really the setup. Then there's the execution. And mostly what I'm going to talk about with that is your time allocation. A lot of people think that oh, I've got an hour meeting. I've got an hour to present to this person. No, don't even think about it that way. Okay. First of all, an executive meeting requires an executive summary. And that's really all you're going to present. Now, that's not all you're going to be prepared for or all you're going to talk about, but that's all you're going to present. All right. So I have here the first 5 minutes, and I'm calling that introductions. Could it go less than that? Sure, it could go 2 minutes. I'd be careful if it gets a lot more than 5 minutes because you're going to need that time for the meeting. You know, you don't want it to go 10, 15 minutes unless you really find a personal connection with this person and they really want to go on and you can see that this is going to help your case. But generally speaking, that introduction needs to be very quick. But you can try to find that personal connection too. And part of that you got perhaps from your research, all right? And so maybe you grew up in a similar place or went to the same school, or you found out that you know somebody that lives in his or her neighborhood. And gee, you know them and they're friends with them. They barbecue with them once a year. And these kinds of things can really then create an opportunity for the third part, which is follow-up, which I haven't gotten to yet. So anyway, there's the introduction, then there's the presentation. And again, that needs to be an executive summary kind of presentation. It needs to hit the main points, but it needs to put some hooks in there. You want to throw some intriguing things out there that will get them to ask other questions. And obviously, you need to be prepared for them to ask any question about anything you're talking about, and maybe even outside of what you're talking about. The next part, I'm saying leave 30 minutes for the executive to go wherever they want with this. All right. That way, you know, they can feel like they're a little bit in control, right? You don't want them to be in complete control because you're driving the agenda here, right? You have your message, but you need to let them feel like they can go where they want, ask the questions they want. And I found that I may think they're going to go in one direction and they go in another direction, but as long as you're prepared, as long as you are the subject matter expert on what you're presenting, it doesn't matter which area they go because you're the smartest person in the room on this subject. And, you know, when you can do that, that becomes very effective. If you try to do I'm going to do a 45-minute presentation, here's what happens. About 20 or 25 minutes after, oh yeah, I got a message. You see them start looking at their phone. You can see they're getting edgy and bored. I've seen it happen. And you don't want to go there. But when you can get them engaged and get them to be asking the questions and kind of feel like they're driving the meeting, it's very effective. The conclusion, the review, roughly 10 minutes. Okay, this of course isn't completely hard and fast, but you know, if it's a boring meeting for them, what's going to happen in about 5 or 10 minutes to the hour, their assistant may come in and say, you have that meeting at 3 o'clock, and they're going to say, oh yeah, I don't want to be late for that. They're gone. If they really like this meeting, here's what happens. It gets to be 5 of, that administrative assistant comes in and says, you have that 3 o'clock meeting. That executive will say, you know, we're going over some very important things here. Tell them I'll be late. I've seen that happen as well. And that's always a very positive sign. That's really kind of the guts of the how you execute the meeting. I do want to mention one other thing, and that's the use of visuals. And I'm talking here primarily in face-to-face. I guess that's old school now, face-to-face meetings rather than Zoom. But PowerPoint is way overused and way misused. We could spend an hour or two on that alone, but I just want to tell you that if you're using visuals and PowerPoint in particular, they have to be effective. If you're in a small meeting of a dozen or less people, you may not need PowerPoint unless you really have some graphs, charts, or something else like that. And if you do, you can even have those in handouts. But people begin to focus on the visuals instead of looking at the presenter. All right. So I would very much limit the use of visuals. I want to give one quick example of a don't and how you can change that into a do. And so how many times have you been in a presentation and said, I have this really important information here. I know you can't see it, but if you can't see it, what do you have it there for, right? You know, if you want somebody to see that little chart, put the chart there, blow it up, circle the important piece, and have a little note there, okay? But I know you've all heard that. I know you can't see it, but thing, and that just is not a good thing to do. Think about your visuals, have them focusing on the presenter and the presentation, not the PowerPoint. Finally, the follow-up. You want to follow up with a thank you. If it's been an effective meeting, there's probably follow-up information that you want to send. Be prompt. Maybe the information that you need to send takes some time to research. Doesn't matter. Be prompt with a thank you and a follow-up and say, we got this, thank you for this and that and the other thing. And I am following up on researching that other information, and we will have it to you by, and have a date and meet that date, okay? So that's the executive presentation tips. Here's a summary of it. Again, the setup, have your purpose, research your audience, get them an agenda. The execution, executive meetings require an executive summary. Be prepared, even though you let them really feel like they're guiding the meeting, you need to sort of have control in the background of that. And careful use of visuals, and finally the follow-up. That's my 10 minutes for today. That's my executive summary presentation. And here we have, just as a final slide, Alana and I are doing Pro FM class starting on February 18th. And you can go to her website, afdfacilitiesplanning.com, and go to the course selection button and sign up for a register for that class. And we also are looking at a third series of these 10-minute FM lessons coming up in the spring.
Yeah, so if you have any ideas for topics you'd love for us to cover, I've already got some kind of thinking in my head, but would love to hear any topics you have. You can throw them in the chat, or you can send an email. And we also have all of these videos now on a YouTube channel, so I will send that out again as well, so you can look at them again or share them with a colleague or something like that. We're so appreciative of all of your support and participation. This is, I think, now our 10th lesson, and so thank you all for participating. Really appreciate the love, and look forward to our next round. So thanks, everybody.